report, please, what it is that you believe that Mr. Queckie did, maybe in a summary form, and then we'll come to some discussion.
Kind of in a nutshell, he sent a solicitation email for the last election. So it was to affect the term that he's in right now. He sent it to about just less than 300 people. I believe there were around 280 people, 55 of which were either city, state, federal employees. And one of them came to the organization I'm the president of. We're currently without an executive director, so I was monitoring that email to make sure that we didn't miss any business opportunities. And when it came to him, I thought that was odd, because number one, having run for office, I felt that that was probably a violation of state law whenever I saw who the emails had gone to. Plus, it kind of put me in an awkward situation being in an organization, the head of an organization that actually receives funding from the city. So, of course, you know, one of the things that came up in my mind almost immediately was, is this going to affect our ability to get funding from the city? And what the email asked for, very, very simply, was financial contributions either to him or to a PAC that supported him and the other three individuals in this involved in this removal suit, or essentially volunteer help. So he asked for essentially three things: money for him, money for the PAC, volunteer help for either.
Did you take it upon yourself to start a petition to seek their removal?
Yeah, actually, the reason that came up is because I became aware of a number of what I consider to be conflicts of interest between some of the actions of the people on council now, these four in particular, and the charter. They seemed like essentially ethical dilemmas for me. They seemed like conflicts of interest. They seemed like increasing examples of when these folks had an opportunity to choose between sworn duty because of the office that they sit in and self-serving politics. It seemed like they always leaned toward the self-serving politics. In one of the sections of emails, quite a few of them actually, that is, there were quite a few emails in there. Every email in the group pretty much had either a very abbreviated or completely missing recipients.
Do you have an understanding as to whether or not her contacting the chief of police would be interference with administration?
I know that now.
And what was it that Nancy Gann said about contacting the chief of police?
Myself and Officer Beam were standing outside the city hall as they brought in the voter forms, and she came out and was standing there talking to me, and she asked me if I was aware of a house in her area that they wanted looked at, and I told her yes, I was. It was a house that we had been watching along with code enforcement for some illegal activity, and we discussed that, and she told me that she had contacted the chief about that house, and she said, I know I'm not supposed to do that, so don't you say anything. And I immediately looked at Officer Beam, and he looked at me, and neither of us really knew what to do. And when somebody tells me I'm not supposed to do that, don't say anything. And there was other people present out there, civilians, and I didn't know who they were, and I don't know if they ever heard that.
So we have a couple things happen. Number one, she's said that she knows she's violated the charter and contacts the chief of police anyway.
Yes.
Two, she told you, don't report me for violating the charter.
Yes.
And she's a council person that has some authority, if you will, over your family.
Yes.
In your capacity as Assistant Director of the Public Works Department, have you ever come to knowledge of whether or not a council person has called the department and asked for specific services?
Yes.
Okay. Has that happened recently?
Yes, it has.
Can you tell the court about that?
It was probably in the week of 12th of January this year. My secretary had come out and told me that the mayor had called and wanted to have her street plowed. And so when she told me that, I said, well, you know, I'm not gonna pay, let her go, you know, I'm not gonna talk to her or have her do anything. I said, you know, if you wanna call Chuck or something, he's in that area, but I'm not gonna pull him from one area to go make sure that, she gets taken care of.
So in other words, you believe, and you tell me, I won't put words in your mouth, was it a, hey, drop everything and come over and take care of me?
Well, like I said, I was coming from one office to the other, and the secretary come out, and she said, hey, the mayor called, and wanted to know if we could go take care of this. I said, well, you know, they're on their own routes, you know, they'll get to it when they can. If you wanna call Chuck, you can call Chuck and tell him. And, I said, but I'm not gonna call Chuck and have him pull off where he's at, go and take care of that there. And then at lunchtime, when Chuck came in, he come and said, hey, I took care of the Mayor Street.
Through the course of this case, we've come up with some documents that we think are important, and there's a couple here I'd like to ask you to look at. And I placed before you, when we first got together, an exhibit book. I'd like you to turn to the first tab there, Exhibit A1, and tell me if you recognize that.
It's an email from Mr. Kwecky to many people, including myself, requesting a campaign donation, possibly volunteer time to help with his election for himself and also the PAC.
Did you see any language contained within this email that, words to the effect of, if you're a government employee, if you're a city employee, disregard this, anything like that?
No, sir.
All right. It doesn't have any qualifying language whatsoever, does it?
No, sir.
All right. Now, when you received this letter, did you believe that it was, or this email, excuse me, did you believe that it was inappropriate in any regard?
Yes, sir, I did. In fact, when I got the email, when I read it, I was shocked, and I printed off, as I recall, took it to the city manager, Jeff McCorsky, and said, we got an issue. And I got this email from Mr. Kwecky, and I just, you know, I made a joke that, you know, what do I have to pay for the job?
Yeah.
And I was stunned by it. I was saddened by it too.
Yeah. Do you view this email from Mr. Kwecky as an improper communication directly to you, who's not under their direct control?
Yes, sir, in this case, yes.
All right. And so this is a direct communication by a sitting council person directly to you, fair?
Yes, she was the mayor too.
And she was the mayor, okay. Now, the middle sentence that begins with please, would you please read that into the record?
Please do not work on increasing the weight limits on non-interstates without agreement with the council.
It was a direct, did you interpret that as a direct order to stand down, basically?
I did.
All right. When you got this email, who is your direct supervisor again?
Jeff McCorsky.
Did you take this to Jeff McCorsky and talk to him about it?
I did.
And what did you say? Wait a minute, hey, I work for you, and who do I work with?
Well,
I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
well, I mean, what I said was, look, boss, I work for you.
Right.
And we've got an issue, and, you know, you need to fix this, and what do you want me to do? And he said, well, you better do what she says, and I'll talk to her.
Okay. Have you reviewed the email that's contained within Exhibit A1?
Yes.
And do you agree with me that it is a violation of the accepted election practices of City of Morgantown council members?
It was a direct communication to an employee, yes.
All right. We have a council member who's soliciting city employees for funds and time donations here. Did you send out an email to everybody?
No, I did not.
Did Mr. Kwecky send out an email to everybody, say, hey, disregard this? It was illegal and wrong. I shouldn't have done it.
No.
So today, as Mr. Kelly testified, he would still be under the impression that he's been asked this improper election communication. Fair?
I think the communications I had with him after that, after Councilman Kwecky apologized in the press, said it was a mistake. We talked about that.
And Glenn was comfortable with that as a response.
The 4 provides, he shall see that all laws, ordinances, and provisions of this charter and acts of the council, subject to enforcement by him or by officers subject to his direction and supervision, are faithfully executed and enforced, correct?
That's correct.
That gives you the authority to enforce the city charter, fair?
The charter is not subject to my enforcement.
Sir, with regard to paragraph 2, violates any express prohibition of this charter. You have just testified that Mr. Kowecki, Ms. Celine, Ms. Schamberger, and Ms. Gans have all violated express provisions of this charter, correct?
Yes.
Have any of them forfeited their position?
No.
Is that in and of itself a violation of the charter?
I do believe it would be up to council to determine if that was a charter violation.
It says a council member shall forfeit his office if he, and then it goes through these violates an express provision. Council member shall. Is that what it says?
Yes.
You don't really expect a council that's controlled by the 4 people who have now violated express terms of this to vote 4-3 to essentially kick them out of council, do you?
I think the council would bring it up to, for action to be made public.
Has that ever happened though? Have they done that in this case?
The information was provided to council, but no, that is not happening.
They didn't bring it up to the public, so we know that wasn't going to happen, right? And you specifically told them it was a violation of the charter.
I provided them the information, that's correct.
And these 4 people have all taken an oath to uphold the charter, and so they're charged with knowledge contained within it, correct?
Yes.
These communications that we've been talking about, and your email doesn't contemplate the casual conversation, how the Steelers go. We're talking about the substantive communications here of exhibits, of the D series of exhibits, correct?
In this email, that's correct.
All right. And that is what you testified earlier that would merit their removal, their mandatory removal, their mandatory forfeiture, is that they have these direct communications that are specifically contemplated by the charter. Right?
I'm discussing the direct communication with employees, yes.
Yeah. And that's what mandates their removal if we're going to apply the charter, correct?
Yes.
So councilpersons Gans and Celine were engaged in some browbeating, and we'll get to that.
Yes.
And were you there when that happened?
Yes, I was.
Was this an event where somebody was yelling, being verbally abusive, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Threatening?
Yes.
All right. And was the general content of it, in other words, what caused the browbeating, if you will, was Mrs. Tucker's performance of her job responsibilities?
Yes.
Right. And as I understand it, Mrs. Tucker provided some information to Mr. Papandreas, and those 2 didn't like it.
Right. Yes.
And her job, Mrs. Tucker's job is to provide that information.
Yes.
All right. And Mrs. Gans and Ms. Celine found out about it and came to talk to her about it. All right. There's also,
When was this? It was May 6th. May 6th, 2014.
did you form any opinion as to whether or not this would be a violation of the election laws applicable in the city of Morgantown?
Yes, this was a violation. And then I had an email with our city manager, and he said that since I am the chief election officer, I should be handling this.
And how did you become aware that the investigation was complete?
That it was complete.
Yes.
I became aware by Councilor Celine. She came into my office day before yesterday, late afternoon, and asked me to make a copy of the election investigation. or scan it and send it to her. I had talked to the chief and asked him if I could get a copy of it, since I am the chief election officer. This whole investigation, I am the chief election officer. I have not been part of the meetings or the executive sessions, and I was kind of concerned and why I wasn't part of it. So I asked the chief, I said, I need to have a copy of that since I am the election officer. And he said, well, you can get a copy by FOIA. And so after I had scanned this and sent it, in fact, I really didn't know what it was until I looked at it. I scanned it and sent it to Councilor Celine. I asked our city attorney, I said, how can she get this when it has to be received by FOIA? And he said, I don't know how she received it.
But let's go back a second. Jennifer Celine was the subject of the investigation.
Correct.
And she had the information which exonerated her before the chief election officer.
Right.
Was there, when the Wards and Boundaries Commission was doing their work, did they appear to be considering, hey, wait a minute, Jim Smith lives over here and he might want to run. We can't have him running here because Ralph's going to run. That kind of thing.
There was some controversy at one time, and I just made them aware that there is no political issues to be brought up at any time, that this has to be all neutral.
Okay. And the Wards and Boundaries Commission tried to accomplish that, fair?
Yes, sir.
Did you feel that there was any interference by city council members with that task?
Yes.
All right. Will you please tell the court what that interference was?
There was many times when council members, at one time they came to a work session, they came to various meetings, and I think that the commission felt that they were trying to undermine them or made them feel uneasy about the decisions they were making.
That they were being improperly influenced?
Yes. It's been a very rough situation. The community needs to have better people serving this community.
These were work sessions, and we ended up having to put in a public portion so these counselors could speak. And to me, I was intimidated, or they tried to intimidate us. I went to the city manager after the one meeting when Councilor Schamberger stood up and stomped her foot and said, I have a question and I'm going to ask it now, because Linda Little had asked, or Linda Tucker, had asked anyone that had any questions to please write them down and hand them to her. The then Mayor Celine wanted to talk, and she said that she couldn't. Just write down your questions and we will take care of what you need to do. And she said, if I can't talk, then there's no sense in me even being here. So she left that meeting, and we really didn't know that they would put in the same ward until after what we had done. It was brought to our attention. Dr. Donaldson came in one of the meetings and said, we need to look at something else because we've pitted two counselors against each other and we can't take a chance on losing good leadership. That was what he said. And I stood up and said, sir, I will not be a part of gerrymandering. And I said, I cannot do this. We have to do it the way we've already done it. We can't change it because of someone wanting to not be running against another person.
Did you have any of the experience of witnessing the council members present?
I don't remember council members being present at first, but I do remember them being there after the decision was made to change boundaries and the way they run.
And they, in fact, adopted a position that was counter to, I wouldn't say counter, it was just different from what the Wards and Boundaries Commission provided. And that position did not, at least so the argument goes, equalize the districts as nearly as practicable.
No.
What we do know is that what was adopted by the council was much different than what.
Yes, it was what was adopted by the Ward and Boundary Commission was a better match than what was adopted by council.
Okay. And what was adopted by council preserved the ability of the two to run independently.
Yes.
I have witnessed, and I believe that the council persons in question, Celine, Gantz, Kawecki, Schomburger, abused their power in a politically motivated way, interfering, intimidating, and negatively influencing the work of the Morgantown Ward and Boundaries Commission. Further, the councilperson's rejection of the Ward and Boundaries Commission proposals was a politically motivated abuse of power to protect their political office at the expense of equal representation of Morgantown. I myself can cite 8 specific examples in which that intimidation, interference, and confusion was created by these councilpersons. I believe that the report was corrupted and that the final commission report was manipulated to include inaccurate and misleading information.
And you believe that these 4 council members that are subject to this proceeding did this activity?
I'm convinced of it. I witnessed it myself.
And that would have a direct impact on the election, which gave them the right to be council members today.
It's corrupted the, in my opinion, it corrupted the election.